All right, let's get started. So, hello everyone. My name is Clayton Bryan, and I am a member of the investment team at 500 Startups. I am moderating today's panel with Brian Hollins, founding member of Black VC. So, Brian, to kick things off today, can you give us a brief introduction and tell us how you got here and maybe some things that inspire you?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me, Clayton. For those joining, thanks for joining. Clayton's a good friend. We go back a little while. Since you said how I got here, I'm going to go back instead of just starting with boring work stuff. Originally from Washington, D.C., biracial son. So my mom is white, my dad is black, oldest of three boys. My younger brother, Mac, is a receiver for the Miami Dolphins. My youngest brother, Drew, was a Marine and is currently a student at Columbia University. I went to Stanford University, graduated in 2013, and then was at Goldman Sachs for 6 years. Spent time in the private wealth management group, and then spent time building a new group for the firm called the Emerging Entrepreneurs Coverage Group. Core thesis there was that Goldman does a great job for you when you're ready to raise $30 or $40 million and does nothing for you before then. And so we built a group to go out to the venture capital ecosystem and figure out ways to resource and equip early stage entrepreneurs with the resources of Goldman ahead of where they traditionally could get access to the firm. And then spend 2 years in our enterprise software growth equity group, doing B2B enterprise software investing for the firm out of the merchant banking division. And I'm currently a student at Harvard Business School. So, like I said, excited to be here, and I think we're going to run through a variety of topics and things that I spend a lot of time on and am passionate about. But excited to just continue to support the 500 community.
Awesome, thank you for that background. And I think in terms of the next question. And what I also say, just in terms of some ground rules, I'm gonna have about maybe 30 minutes of questions prepared, but after that, I'd love to turn it over to the audience members. So for those of you that are viewing, please feel free to drop a question in the Q&A feature on the webinar, and when we get to 30 minutes after, I'll turn it over to some of those questions. But to get started, I think, I'd love to hear more about the origin story with Black VC. Black VC is a group that I started to hear about, I think maybe like 2016. A good friend of mine, Ernest Sweat, kind of tipped me off to things that were happening there. And, I was really interested and proud to say that I've attended events probably since 2016, but would love to kind of hear how you and the rest of the founders got together and discover this need. What was kind of that origin story?
Yeah, absolutely. It was started several years ago, as you mentioned. So the founding board, myself, Adina Teklu, Ernest, as you mentioned, Elliot Robinson, and then co-founders, Sydney and Fred. I think at that point I had been in venture for a couple years, and there's not that many of us. There's not that many people that look like you and I, Clayton. And what we recognized was that there was a need for us to share resources, build community, start to kind of understand how we could help one another. And so Black VC at the time wasn't, but today Black VC is the largest venture capital investor ecosystem in the country. And so we host a variety of not just events, but communities, ecosystems, support systems, value-added opportunities for people to not only figure out what venture is, but actually get embedded in it. I think that's one of the things that we recognized really early on was the people that were getting into venture often were getting in because their uncle was in it, or getting in because their dad was in it, or getting in because somebody made an intro and said, you should give this kid a shot. And frankly, we felt like that wasn't happening for the Black community. And so we said, if it's not going to happen for us, then we need to be the ones that create that catalyst for change. And so Black VC was started as an effort to get more people, not just into venture, but then up the curve in venture. So not only how do we get analysts and associates, but how do we start to build principals and partners? And I think, over time, what we've seen is it's still very difficult. Venture is still a network-driven, sort of mentorship-driven a model, and you can't just send your resume somewhere and expect to get a job in venture. And so what we try to do today is facilitate introductions for people that want to get into the industry, but also equip people with the resources they need to get good at this job. I think a large part of your goal in venture is at some point to build your own investment thesis and your own curriculum around, how to build a thesis. And so I think it was only a couple days ago, we had a panel with, I think it was Mercedes, Adina, and Elliot, the three of the best investors I've had a chance to spend time with, going through how to build an investment thesis, how to build a memo, how to think about diligencing a business, not just from a seed perspective, but also a Series A or Series B or a growth perspective, which is where Elliot at Bessemer sits. And so Black VC over time will continue to just equip people with the resources they need to be successful in venture. And, I think it's important. I keep mentioning the word venture. We are very, very specific about the lane that we play in. And so 500 Startups is a great example. There's a variety of resources you could get from the 500 ecosystem as a Black founder. There's a variety of resources you could get from Code 2040 or a variety of the other sort of ecosystems that exist if you want to build companies. If you want to get into venture, that's what Black VC is for. And so we pride ourselves on saying, we don't do everything for everyone. We specifically focus on people that want to be investors, that have a deep passion for investing in their career, and that's who we try to serve.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for all your hard work. I definitely
a lot of work to do still.
Well, yeah, but still, I mean, what we've done or what you've done over the last 4 years has been, amazing. So keep it up. And part of that is, as Black VC continues to evolve, recently you launched the Black Venture Institute. And so I know you mentioned a little bit about that in the previous response, but could you go a little bit deeper in terms of, what are the objectives, and then also maybe, what inspired you to launch the Black Venture Institute? Because, there's been a couple of things out there that have helped folks break into venture. So what in the landscape did you see or did you not see that served as kind of motivation to launch this new initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we saw from 17, 18, 19, kind of the early years of Black VC was we were getting better at getting people into venture. And so we started to see that the funnel was opening up. It was getting easier for us to say, hey, Bessemer, hey, NEA, hey, Insight, hey, TPG, hey, XYZ venture capital firm. Here's people that are, here's underrepresented minorities, here's females, here's people of color. Here are people that are, resourced and ready to be good at their job in venture. And so we prided ourselves on saying we are now really good at getting analysts and associates into the ecosystem. I think the Black Venture Institute team, shout out to Jackson and Layla and Camden and some of the people that have helped me on that initiative. What we saw was an opportunity to say that's going to grow, but there's only so much we can do. There's only so many people we can jam into the bottom of the funnel to get into associate and analyst roles. There's just not that many. It's not a Goldman Sachs or a McKinsey where we could get 100 people in a year. And so we said, what are the other drivers or other ways that we could start to create change in the venture ecosystem for Black people? And what we said is, what if we came top down? And what if we went out to the people that are 7 years at Pinterest, 6 years at Facebook, 9 years at Twitter? What if we went out to the Black executives and operators that currently exist in the ecosystem and said, hey, you have a little bit of discretionary income. You've made a little bit of money in your life. Why aren't you writing 25K angel checks in Black founders? Why aren't you giving people that used to look like you a chance? And so I think what we found was the answer to that question was they just didn't have the confidence to do it. They hadn't been taught throughout their career how to go out and start writing angel checks and start to invest in from a venture capital perspective. And so the Black Venture Institute is exactly that. We went out and found we had over 400 applications, and we took 50 of what we think are some of the most elite and incredible Black executives and operators across the tech and finance industry and said, we're going to spend 2 weeks equipping you with effectively a boot camp in how to be a good angel investor, how to be a check writer. And so everyone from Bill Gurley to Brad Feld to Beezer Clarkson to Elliot Robinson to, we had speakers from all across the venture industry come in and just help them better understand how to be an early stage investor. And I think what we're going to see now is, that program, thanks to Salesforce Ventures, that program is going to exist over the next 3 years. And so there's going to be 6 cohorts of 50 of these executives. And so we're going to effectively introduce 300 new check writers, 300 Black check writers to the venture ecosystem over the next 3 years. And so I pride myself a lot on being a part of that initiative. And I think we're just in the early innings of seeing how that's going to grow. The first cohort ended less than a month ago, and those folks are already out talking about deals, finding new opportunities to build with one another. And I think more than anything, we just created community. These were all people who certainly were seeing deals, certainly were seeing opportunities, but I think just didn't really know how to do it on their own. And so when you put 50 of them in the room together and they can kind of look around and see how successful one another are, they say, you know what, why not us? And I think that's what the Black community needs more than ever, is people that just build confidence in one another and community in one another. And so I'm really excited about what the Black Venture Institute is going to become.
Yeah, it sounds like a phenomenal initiative. And if there's folks that are in the audience that are interested in learning more, where can they go? And when is the next cohort?
Next cohort will start in a little while. It'll be in the first quarter. I think it's blackventureinstitute.com. You could probably also go to blackvc.com and get linked there. What I will say is we've been very specific about who Black Venture Institute is for. And so for anyone that's listening that's 23 or 24 or 19, we've built a program called Breaking Into Venture. And I think that's the right program for someone of that age. Black Venture Institute is for a 34-year-old, a 52-year-old, a 47-year-old, someone who has built their career already and has not got the exposure to venture that they had hoped for. And so that we can sort of, like I said, top down, allow them to take their discretionary income, their passive income, and start to support the founders that are coming through the system. And so, again, we're building programs for investors. And so what we had traditionally was everything for people to get into venture from the bottom. We needed to build something from the other direction. And so now what I think is really cool is we're attacking venture and investing from all angles. And I think it's only over time going to start to support one another and really drive change.
That's great. And I know that you're also a founder of something called the Takeoff Institute, and that's more for undergraduate students. Can you speak a little bit more about what the Takeoff Institute is and what that origin story was?
Absolutely. I believe in helping Black people of all ages, man. So the Takeoff Institute goes even further downstream. So I built the Takeoff Institute with one goal, which is to equip all Black undergraduate students with the resources they need to be successful in their young professional career. And so I myself was a sophomore or a junior or a senior in college at one point. And I think as I got further out into the real world, I spent 6 years at Goldman, 3 or 4 of those, I was running Stanford recruiting for the firm. What I saw was when we looked at a pile of resumes, when we looked at 50 resumes that came out of Stanford, maybe 15 of them would come to me and they'd say, look, these are the Black candidates that we have. Can you help us kind of look through them? Have you spent time with any of them? Things like that. When you start to put people in the left pile or the right pile, meaning the one that's going to get a look and the one that's not, one of the biggest things that drove that difference was who has had internships in their past. And I fundamentally believe that there are way too many Black undergraduate students graduating without ever having an internship in their undergraduate career. And so I'm a student, as I mentioned, I'm at HBS. And so we were doing internships coming out of COVID, February, March, everyone had their internships set up. And I was watching HBS kids lose their internships. Like companies were like, hey, look, the world's weird, sorry. We don't have a great answer. We're just not going to pay you. And so, figure it out. And so I was like, shit, if that's happening to HBS students, what's going to happen to undergraduate students? And then what's going to happen to Black undergraduate students? And so I had already had a problem with the fact that Black undergraduate students weren't getting enough internships, and that's what was holding them back. And then I knew that COVID was really going to kind of multiply that. And so I built the Takeoff Institute with really the thesis that if I could equip students with the resources that I knew that you got at a McKinsey or a Bain or a Goldman or a Morgan Stanley internship without that name, that I could actually get them just as ready for the real world as those organizations and institutions did. And so we had over 300 applications and ended up taking 50 fellows for our first cohort this summer, and then had over 90 applications for advisors and ended up taking 50 advisors. And so every student was paired with an advisor. And what they did over the summer was they worked on a one-on-one project where they built a strategy, they did analysis, they did research, they presented to the board of the Takeoff Institute, and there was a speaker series. And we basically went through the same kind of things that I think you go through in an internship without needing to go to, like I said, any of those big names. And so we built a partnership with the Wall Street Journal to give every kid a login, because I think it's important to understand what's going on from a macroeconomics perspective. We got a login with the Wall Street Prep. And so every student took a PowerPoint and a Excel tutorial, because I think that those are two of the most important skills that you can build before you get to the real world. We built a partnership with PitchBook. Some people on here might not even be familiar with PitchBook, but PitchBook is one of the largest kind of data sets for tech and investing in the entire world. And I hadn't met PitchBook until I was in my fourth year at Goldman, because it cost $25,000 for a license. And so we were able to build a partnership to give all of our students access to PitchBook. And so I went out to the ecosystem and said, if I can give these resources to students without them needing to go to these big places, I can actually get them just as ready for the real world as those places do. And so I take a lot of pride in the Takeoff Institute. It will continue to grow. We'll have another cohort next summer, hopefully even more than 50. We're lucky enough to be sponsored now by Square, and so have a little bit of money to sort of stand things up and make it a little real. But for anyone that's listening, www.takeoffinstitute.com. We'd love to have you as a potential fellow, and we'd love to have you as an advisor. So thanks for giving me a chance to kind of talk about it.
Awesome. And you know, I want to switch gears a little bit, because we've been talking a lot about folks that want to break into venture, either at a junior investor role or maybe an executive switching over to something a little bit more later in career. But wondering if you have any advice for underrepresented founders, you know, as they're building right now in these uncertain times. And so, you know, I guess two-part question. One of it, the first part is, you know, what advice do you have for the founders right now, the Black founders? And then also, like, is there anything that Black VC is doing that's founder facing or that's going to be coming up in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I have so much advice for Black founders. I think the first thing I would say is you have to find your core. I think that's an extremely important kind of message that I would hope to get across, and that I frankly do get across when I speak with Black founders. We talk about it a lot in the Takeoff Institute. I think there's a big difference between a mentor and a champion. And so what I mean by that is, a mentor is somebody that you have your monthly call with, that checks in and says, hey, you're doing great. And frankly, a lot of white people started showing up in the last 6 months to be mentors to Black founders. A champion is somebody that still has that monthly call, still checks in and still says that they want to support you. But then the second they get off that call, they go and make 4 calls for you. And then every time an opportunity comes up where a VC says, hey, I want to get in front of more Black founders, they think of you. You got to find more champions in your life. And I think that they exist. You know, I think a lot of people think they need to go far and wide to find that. It's not always the richest person. It's not always the person with the most followers. A champion is just someone that truly believes in you. It doesn't matter what product you're building. It doesn't matter, you know, what you've done in the past. It's someone that fundamentally believes that you as a human being are going to be successful, and they want to help you do that in any way that they can. And so I've had a lot of champions in my life. I've been fortunate to have champions. I asked all of my advisors to be champions for their fellows in the Takeoff Institute. And so for Black founders that are out there, you know, I think you need to find the people that believe in what you're doing and ask them to double down on you. Find ways to go to the 3 or 4 people that understand your story, understand what you're trying to build, and stop spending time with the 19 people that showed up and said, hey, I want to invest in your company because I heard about this George Floyd thing. I think that it's really important for Black founders to recognize that nothing has changed in terms of the product they were building or their potential as a human being. You had just as much potential before the rest of the world decided to believe in you. I believe that, and so I think it's really important that you go out and find people that just give you a chance to really shine. The second thing I'd say is there are a lot of resources out there right now. And, I started to allude to it a little bit. Some of them have showed up in ways that, maybe you don't necessarily agree with why they showed up, or you think they're a little late to showing up. But the reality is there's a lot of programs and resources and things that have showed up over the last 6 to 9 months that I think are very valuable for founders, specifically Black founders. And so there are incubators, there are pitch competitions, there are office hours, there are Twitter blogs and Medium posts that direct you to new things. So don't be afraid to use those resources. I think what happened this summer is, and I'm a victim of this as well. I think some of us we got a little resentful and we got a little angry about why these resources were showing up, and we were saying, where were you before, and why did it take this in order for you to show up? But I think the glass half full way to look at that is, sometimes it takes a long time for things to change. And some of that change is finally happening. And so spend your time going out and figuring out, if I'm an enterprise software founder, what are the new programs that just showed up that are investing for the first time in people that look like me? If I'm a consumer founder or a marketplace builder, what are the best marketplace or consumer investors that are out there that might not have taken my call 9 months ago, but started to realize that they don't take my call and they're taking it now. And so don't be afraid to send that cold email. Don't be afraid to follow up with people that might have said no in the past, because there's a lot of new opportunities out there, and I think it's important to look for them.
Yeah, I think the piece on champions is spot on. We all can use folks that will speak highly of us in the rooms that we're not in. So
that's right.
So definitely for those audience members, think about that when you're looking through folks that can help you in your career. So I only have 2 more questions. So just a reminder to the attendees, pop questions in on the Q&A, and I'll get to that in about 6 to 10 minutes. So Brian, so I know that so much of the work that you've been doing with Black VC centers around education, but are there other things that we all can do as an ecosystem to create more change on the investment side?
That's a good question. Investing's tricky, right? I mean, there's pools of capital that have been traditionally allocated to people that don't look like us, right? And so part of my goal with Black VC is always to shine light on people that might not have had that light in the past. I think where I've started to spend a little bit more time is saying, I actually can't change Bessemer's opinion. I actually can't change Sequoia's opinion. It's really hard for me to change Lightspeed's opinion. And so I've tried to spend more time with this idea of ownership. I think ownership is something that the Black community has missed for a really long time. I think we've gotten ownership wrong for much longer than I've been alive. And much of that ownership was taken from us. Much of that ownership was rightfully ours and wrongfully stolen. We could go into a whole bunch of 1619 stuff, but the reality is, I think going forward, we have to find ways to take ownership back. And so ownership in venture means being on the cap table. And so I'm lucky enough to be a scout for Lightspeed. And so Lightspeed has enabled me and equipped me with capital to go out and invest on their behalf into companies with effectively, 95% of the right to say yes or no. We need more of that, and so I'm proud to say that I'm part of Lightspeed's cohort. Mercedes Ben and Barry Zeggers built a cohort of 40 Black, Latinx, Pacific Islander scouts. They're giving us an opportunity to take that ownership, where I can write a check in a business and I have, a 20% carry, and I can be a part of that business's, trajectory. And that's just not true in the past, right? If I'm at Goldman Sachs and I'm investing in a business, if I find the best business Goldman has ever invested in, I'm still just making my base and bonus. I have no incentive or piece of that business. And so what I would like to see going forward is just more opportunities for people to become investors themselves. We need to see more scouts. We need to see more people that are writing angel checks. It doesn't matter if it's $1,000. It doesn't matter if it's on Angel List and it's tiny. What matters is that you're starting to become an owner. And I think over time, recognizing how ownership plays a part in success and kind of long-term wealth generation is sort of an educational component that can't happen when you're just sitting at a traditional industry firm. And so that's something that can't happen overnight. Not every firm is lucky enough to run a $4.5 billion fund like Lightspeed and equip us to become scouts. And I recognize that, but I think that there's an opportunity for the venture ecosystem to start to see that there's people that look like me and you that are better at finding companies than them. There are parts of the founder ecosystem that Clayton and I are better at finding than a Doug Leone or a Bill Gurley. And that's not to say that Bill or Doug are bad investors. It's to say that you and I are embedded in those ecosystems, and we have a better chance of getting to that founder before the thing is a 10x or a 50x. And so investors recognizing that opportunity is both an opportunity for them from a performance perspective, but also an opportunity for us to get our sea legs and really start to become investors with our own theses and with our own opportunities to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And I think you recently spoke with Crunchbase about kind of the desire to not only find the emerging fund managers, Black fund managers, but also Black angel investors.
Yeah.
And you kind of alluded to that, in your last response. But have you seen or have you seen programs, or what recommendations do you have for us to promote more Black angels? Like, how do we get that jump started?
Absolutely. There's new programs popping up for emerging managers, which I think is really cool. I was lucky enough to be a part of one called a 4A Angel to Fund Manager. And so how do you become, not just a 25K check writer, but someone who can raise a 10 or $15 million fund? There's another program called Operator, which is run by Winter Mead, who came out of Sapphire Ventures. And so for folks that are interested in becoming emerging managers and actually running their own funds, I would highly suggest looking at those two programs. I think for anyone else, identifying, Black emerging managers is not that hard. Do a little bit of homework would be my challenge, right? If you're building the next Plaid or the next Twilio, and that's what you're building, there's plenty of ways to find the emerging managers that are coming out. The 645 Ventures, the Slauson and Co's, the New Age Capitals. There are a variety of funds out there that I think are, to be honest, fairly public. They've made their desire known, and so we need to continue to support them and find ways for Black investors to be supporting Black founders. But I do think that we've made a lot of strides in the last year. I think if you asked me that same question in the middle of 2018, I'd say, there's only a handful of funds that are truly run by Black GPs. I think that's changing, and that's not to say that it's gotten crowded. I think we're far from crowded from not just a number of funds perspective, but also an AUM perspective. And so a lot of those funds are smaller than what we see from our white colleagues. But I think that we've made a lot of strides, and I think over the next 3 to 5 years, you'll see the AUM and the performance of a lot of Black emerging managers start to increase, and that's because of organizations like Black VC, where we can support them, resource them, equip them, better connect them to founders, all of those kinds of things. And so I'm super excited. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I always have been, but I fundamentally believe that venture capital for people of color is changing for the better.
All right, I'm going to switch things up and go to some of these questions in the Q&A. So I'm seeing a lot of questions around mentors and champions. So I'm going to try to combine them. So Brian, can you share how you maintain relationships with your mentors and champions? How have you used your champions to help further your career? And you know, where did you find them? So let's get
Yeah.
started with those questions.
Yep. So I'll start with maintaining. I actually think maintaining is a big challenge for a lot of people. And one of the things that I got advice on really early on, and again, it comes from my experience as an investor. So for folks that don't know, when you're a GP of a fund, you write a quarterly investment report for your LPs. It says all the things you've done well, all the things you've kind of done well, all the things you suck at, all the things you promised to do, all the people you've met. I think that writing a quarterly report is one of the most underutilized mentorship and champion resources that are out there. And a lot of people, when they hear that, say, "Oh, I tried that," or "Oh, that doesn't sound that special." It's not that special, but the reality is people don't do it. It's no different than a handwritten note. There's nothing special about a handwritten note. It's just nobody does it. And so when you get that handwritten note, it's still special. And so I've done a quarterly report for, on the cusp of kind of 30 to 50 people, somewhere between there, every quarter since I think the middle of 2016. And do I get 30 to 50 responses? Absolutely not. But what I do get is an opportunity to report to the people that I think have been a part of my life and have helped me get to that point that I'm at, to say, almost thank you in a little bit of a different way. There are a lot of people that may not have the time to respond to that email, may not have the time to tell me I'm doing a great job, but at some point, because of the asks I made in that quarterly update, because of the things I told them about, they thought of something where they could plug me in. And if I have 30 to 50 people thinking of one time a year where they could plug me in, then that's 30 to 50 new opportunities for me a year. And I think that compounds. And so I would really encourage everybody on this call, whether you want to be a founder, whether you're starting to build a company, whether you have no clue what you want to do with your life, start to build that group of 30 to 50. Maybe it starts as 3 to 5, maybe it's already 10 to 12, but don't be afraid to send that update. And I think right now is a great time. It's December 3rd. So send your 2020, this year was a shit show. Here's my update. What happened? What's going to happen? What I'm focused on for 2021? My 3 biggest asks, if I could make any ask of you, the people that I would love to meet. If you happen to know these 5 people, don't be afraid to build a pretty robust quarterly kind of update. I think you'd be surprised how many people will come back with answers and resources and opportunities for you. Clayton, remind me of the second part of that question.
The second part was where to find them, and then also, how to get them the help. So I think you answered how to get them the help, but what sources have you used to find mentors and champions in the past?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that's hard, right? I've been, I've worked my tail off to get into the schools that I went to, and I think naturally there's resources that come out of those schools. And so, let's not pretend that everyone can go to Stanford and Harvard. And so if you couldn't use academia, so let's start with that. If you could use academia, your .edu or the school that you went to, the alumni base, by definition, they are supposed to help you with the things that I was just describing. Let's say you can't use any of academia. I think the next place that I usually go is, what trajectory am I trying to set in my career? And so if I'm 24 years old and I'm not sure if I want to be a founder or be an investor, then I go find people that have been both, and I go talk to them and I say, hey, investor that used to be an operator, or hey, founder that started in venture, how did you make that decision? Walk back 3 to 4 years and tell me about that fork in the road and the things that you did to help you decide which way to go. I think you'd be surprised how many people are excited to talk to you about that opportunity, because, everybody remembers when they were stuck. I would argue I'm still stuck, but I certainly remember a point 3-4 years ago where I was way more stuck. And so everybody remembers that point of vulnerability. And so I think there's opportunities to reach out to people cold that people don't take advantage of. People are scared to send cold emails. As someone that came through as an investor and had to start learning how to cold email a CEO, a 55-year-old white guy who was worth $75 million if I Googled his net worth at 25 years old, I just learned how to get over it. It doesn't matter if he responds. What matters is that I tried, you know? And so I took those opportunities to slowly over time recognize that if I sent 50 of those, I was probably going to get a few responses. Maybe if I sent 3 and they didn't respond, it wasn't going to work. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they get afraid to send the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th and the 8th and the 9th. You have to play a volume game. If you really want to be successful, you can't be afraid to talk to people that have already been successful. And that doesn't mean send them a bullshit email that says, hey, let's grab coffee. You know, explain what you researched in their background or their experience that you specifically are excited to learn about. Explain where you're coming from, what you're trying to build, the things you've done in your past, the programs or organizations you're a part of. Explain all of that and be thorough, but don't be afraid to send that email. I think that that's something that people could really challenge themselves to be better at. Even for myself, you know, I still to this day, I might get nervous to email a Robert Smith or a Michael Jordan or a Jay-Z. You know, there's always levels to where you get nervous, but sometimes you just got to send it. You never know what it's gonna turn into, and if you don't send it, you'll never find out.
Great advice. Next question is from Maya. Maya asks, what advice do you have for people who are very early in their career, as early as a spring 2020 graduate, but do want to get engaged and involved in supporting aspiring Black founders and Black investors?
So hold on, let me understand this better. So you're still in college, right? You just graduated in spring 2020. So you just got out of college, but you want to support founders and investors that are a little bit older than you. Is that the right way to think about that question?
Yeah, I think she's about to graduate she just graduated this spring.
Okay. Shit, why I wouldn't worry about supporting them, Maya. Build your own thing. You know, get out there and do you. I think people, you know, especially right now, I talk a lot about this word, the entrepreneurial unlock. I think one thing that's really interesting that's happening right now is Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and all these companies showed up and said, hey, you're not coming back to the office until July of 2021. And so for the next 7 months, when you're on the Zoom and you're listening to me and Clayton, in your second window, you should have the thing that you are most passionate about. Full stop. Me and Clayton should never be your whole screen. You should always be working on the thing that if you had a 9 to 5 and you were in the office and it was weird because you sat next to people and you couldn't pull it up, that's not true right now. The only person next to you is your dog. And so you should take this opportunity being at home over the next 6 to 7 months to say, what is the thing I've always wanted to build? What is the thing that I'm passionate about that nobody's built, that I know I have an edge on? For me, that was the Takeoff Institute. I ran Stanford recruiting. I ran Black recruiting for Goldman Sachs. I understood what it took to get into Goldman, which meant I probably understood what it took to get into most banks or most consulting gigs. And so I said, how can I hack that system? How can I help the people that are behind me get into that with more ease? And so I built the Takeoff Institute. And that the Takeoff Institute that you see on the website, or the one that Clayton described, or the one that you'll see when Harvard, you know, shouts me out, is very different than the one on day one. The one on day one was a mess. It was in Google Sheets. It was band-aided together. It doesn't need to be perfect in order for you to start stuff. And so just start going on whatever it is that you want to build, because that's what it takes. You know, nobody's going to build it for you. And so what I would say is, if you're coming out of college right now, don't worry about people that are older than you. They'll figure themselves out. Build the thing that you're excited about. Build the thing that you're passionate about, and then start to figure out how you can build connections and resources and network with those people in order for them to pull you up as well.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left, and we got a lot of questions, so this is going to be some rapid fire responses. Could you talk a little bit more about the Black VC program for younger
Yeah.
professionals?
Yeah, I love breaking into venture. I wish breaking into venture was there when I was trying to break into venture, but it wasn't. And so breaking into venture is a program to help people that are just out of college, maybe a few years out, have done one gig, to better understand how to be good as an associate or an analyst in venture. And so how do you build a thesis? How do you do market mapping? How do you run cohort analysis? How do you start to build TAM analysis to understand a total addressable market? How do you understand consumer versus enterprise investing? How do you build forecasting or three statement models for a marketplace? How do you understand supply and demand dynamics of a marketplace? And so all of those things are part of the program. Black VC, by the way, is not the only group that runs that, right? So First Round has Rough Draft Ventures. HBCU has a program. So there are programs out there. Again, do your homework. I really challenge people to that. Like, don't wait for people to tell you what you should be doing. If you want to be in venture, first of all, make sure you want to be in venture. Why do you want to be in venture? I ask people that a lot. People will ping me on LinkedIn or ping me on this and that. Hey, I love what you did. I'd love to figure out how to get into venture. Why do you want to be in venture? What do you know about venture that you're so excited about, other than it just sounds cool? Have you really thought about what venture is? You could go into sales, you could go be a founder, you could go work in clean energy, you could go do VR. Like, why do you want to be in venture? I think that's the first thing that's really important to answer. But the second thing is, if you want to be in venture, go and find those programs. If you don't get into the one in 2020, there's one in 2021. Be ready to get into that one. Reach out to the people and figure out why you didn't get into the one in 2020 and get into the one in 2021. So I think that there's programs out there that will allow people to be successful in venture now that didn't exist even 2-3 years ago. And so just making sure that you understand where they are, reach out to the Black VC team, General at Black VC, they'll help point you in the right direction. I think that's why we built Black VC, is to help people who have those kinds of questions be more successful than we were.
I have a next question is about partnerships. So what can corporate investors and large firms that they represent do to help? My firm has fallen into many of the categories you mentioned. Let's see, perhaps said differently, why is Square a good partner, and why are you excited about working with them versus others that may have approached you?
Yeah, love that. Square's a good partner because they showed up. That's how I think about it. There's a lot of people. Black VC is a great example. 2017, $0. 2018, probably 10 grand. 2019, probably 25 grand. 2020, north of 500K, right? Like, there's people that want to show up once it's cool. How can you show up earlier than that? How can you go find the programs that are just getting started and help them lift? And so Square showed up on day one of the Takeoff Institute and said, I believe in you as a human before I believe in anything else. And whatever you are building, whatever you have a desire to build, I want to support. And so, for anyone that's listening that has access to corporate dollars, I had that while I was at Goldman. I have folks that have that, like Jackson Cummings, who's at Salesforce Ventures, or a variety of other people that I've spent time with. I truly believe that there are a variety of organizations out there that already exist that probably have way less of a budget than you think. And if you could proactively start reaching out to them, I think they would either tell you that they would take the opportunity, or they'd point you in the right direction of some other people like myself. My goal is to build our budget way bigger than just Square. And so we're talking to a variety of other people, but there's not a corporate sponsor that I'm turning down right now. I think that's a privilege that hopefully someday I can say I would only align with the perfect corporate sponsors who are strategically running in my direction. But the reality is, any corporate dollar allows me to build the resources to equip my fellows to be more successful. And I'll take all those dollars right now.
Awesome. Well, that does it. We still have quite a few questions. So Brian, is there a way that folks can keep in touch with you, like your Twitter handle, or what's the best way that they can maybe reach out to you offline?
Twitter's bhalls1, I think, BHOLLS1. I don't even know how you message someone on Twitter. So I'll give you my email for the people that joined. I appreciate you hearing a little bit of our story. But it's just Brian at takeoffinstitute.com. I'd love to be helpful to anyone that's on here, and thank you for spending a little bit of time listening to the Black VC and Takeoff Institute story. And Clayton, obviously, thank you for having me. I appreciate and continue to love what the 500 startups community is doing. So we got a lot of work to do, but we're moving in the right direction. So I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, it's an honor to get together in this format, and yeah, I mean, we've gone a long way since the happy hours with a small handful of Black investors. So
That's right.
Glad to see that this ecosystem is growing, and you know, through more collaborations like this, we're gonna, you know, blow the roof off. So we
That's
really
right.
need to get more folks, more founders of color, more investors of color. It's a testament to you and the other founders of Black VC, the great work that you've done. And so I wish you all the best. And please let us, you know, keep us up to date in terms of what we at 500 could do to support you and Black VC and also the Takeoff Institute. So thank you for the time. Really appreciate it. And thank you everybody that tuned in today. There will be a recording of this made available in the coming days. Thank you, and we couldn't have done this without any of you. So thank you all for joining us, and to success, onward and upward.
Thank you, brother.
All right, take care.